novels in Indian literature. Well, what makes them different and what draws readers to them? Let's find out. So let me take the privilege to invite our panelists onto stage. Mr. Satyarth Nayak, Ms. Sangeeta Bandyopadhyay, Ms. Kavita Kane, and Mr. Sujit Mahapatra. Let's welcome them with a huge round of applause. Mr. Satyarth Nayak is an author, scriptwriter, and journalist based in New Delhi. His short story, E, won the British Council Writers' Circle Prize in 2006. In 2011, two of his stories, Music and Lyrics and The Opportunity, were featured in the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. His novel, The Emperor's Riddle, is a tribute to his uncanny interest in the esoteric. It's a historical thriller laced with Buddhism. The book became a national bookseller and was also praised by Amish Tripathi and Ashwin Sanghi. Let's hear it. And yes, he is from Odisha. Ms. Sangeeta Bandyopadhyay's first novel, Sankini, was published in Desh Patrika 10 years ago. Till date, she has 13 works of fiction to her credit. Her Bengali novel, Roo, was translated into English as Abandon, while two more Bengali novels, Panty and Sanmohan, were published as Panty and Hypnosis. Darkly glamorous and fiercely erotic heroines take center stage in her two novels. She works right now in the editorial department of ABP Ananda, Kolkata. Can we also hear a huge round of applause for her? Ms. Kavita Kane is a senior journalist with a career spanning over 2 decades, which includes working for Magna Publication and the DNA newspaper. She quit her job as assistant editor of Times of India to devote full time to writing. Her debut novel, Karna's Wife, was released in 2013, and the second one, Sita's Sister, is to be out in December 2014. She explores fascinating stories embedded and lost within popular myths. And then we have Mr. Sujit Mahapatra, who's been a consultant to UNICEF and the government of Orissa on reading. He devotes full time to volunteering at Bakul Foundation, which channelizes volunteers for reading. One of the foundation's first initiative was to bring together 1,000 people to set up a children's library in Orissa. He's also a member state steering committee of the National Green Corps under the Ministry of Environment and Forests. I would request Mr. Sujit Mahapatra to now chair the session and take it forward. Let the new voices be heard.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be at the 3rd edition of the Orissa Literary Festival. And thank you very much, Shampa, Mr. Shimoykar, and the entire Indian Express team for inviting me once again. I'm not a new voice in Indian literature. I'm with the new voices. Once upon a time, of course, I had wanted to be a writer, and then I decided to study literature, and I stopped writing. That's why I really admire Kavita and Satyarth, that they studied literature and continued to write literature. So that's really great. A little more about what I find interesting about, of course, Diksha has introduced the new voices here. Satyarth, of course, is the newest of the new voices. He's as young or as old as he looks.
I'm actually much older than I look, so...
No, that's okay. Yeah. Satyarth has just been, his first novel, The Emperor's Riddles, came out earlier this year, 6 months, or a few months back, and it's already a bestseller and it has gone into a reprint. So that's Satyarth, and it's a wonderful, fascinating, mythological history meets mystery kind of a novel which begins with a murder, and as the protagonists try to unravel, get to the bottom of it, they get entangled in the Emperor's Riddles, which as the blurb says, or as the reviews say, leads to a kind of enigma which is so powerful that even the gods would kill for it. So that's the Emperor's Riddles. Kavita's book, Karna's Wife, came out last year, been a bestseller, much talked about. In fact, yesterday also in one of the sessions it was talked about. I find it very interesting in the sense that particularly her, it's not so much about Karna's wife as, the way I see it, as it is about Karna as seen from the eyes of his wife, Urvi. And, but what I find very interesting in her novel is particularly her exploration of how Karna faces his wife after the Vastraharan. So it's a very interesting take on the whole mythological story that we know. Sangeeta, of course, is the less new among the new voices. She has already been writing for more than 10 years and is an established writer in Bangla, though she has been newly published in English. I mean, Penguin India earlier this year came out, published her book Panty, and the book Abandon was published by HarperCollins last year. But she is supposed to be a radical new voice in Bangla literature in terms of, one of the reviews says that she introduced hardcore sexuality into Bangla fiction. And I found Pandy very interesting. It's been translated by Arunav Sinha, who has been here at the Odisha Lit Fest earlier. And it's about this young woman who goes to an abandoned flat and finds this, soft and silky panty in leopard skin print. For those of you who are trying to imagine it's outside, you find it on the cover of the book, which is outside. And she starts fantasizing about the sexual life of the person who wore it earlier. And then their lives become intermingled. So anyway, so much about the speakers. But there's something interesting about underwear here. Interestingly, Satyat also seems to have written a story. He has won a British Council Writers' Prize for a story called Eve, which was written for a competition in which the story had to end with, where is the underwear when you need it the most? So much about underwear. Anyway, my first question.
So I think Sangeeta got inspired by my story, though she won't tell you that.
Okay, right. My first question we'll make it in the form of a conversation, and the first question that actually comes up in the minds of a lot of the audience here is, what is really new about the new voices? Are we just new writers, or is there something new in the voice? And let me tell you here that I'm a little excited about 2014, around this period. It seems that in the last 30 years, every 10 years there seems to be an epoch. It began with 1981, Midnight's Children, which was a kind of epoch. And a lot of writers, like Anita Desai, said that they felt confident that they can write because of Midnight's Children. 1993, we had Vikram Seth's A Suitable Boy, and what he called the ludicrous amount of £250,000 advance. And so many people thought that, well, they can make money out of writing. And of course, 2004, there was Chetan Bhagat's 5 Point Someone. So it seems like we are on the, poised at the cusp of an epoch again. So is it one of these voices? So what is really, has there been a conscious attempt to do the new in your writing? Or what is the new that you see yourself contributing? Is it really superficial? Like, I'm just reminded of one thing. 10 years back in Bollywood, when it was much more stereotypical, there were much fewer experiments happening, every director would make an attempt to argue that his film was, or her film was different. So much so that we used to joke that, so an actor would say that, my film is different, we are not dancing around the trees, we are dancing towards the trees, or something like that. So what is it that, the new that you've been trying to create through your writing? And along with that, question, do you think that there is a danger of homogenization in the new voices? In the sense that, like Reading Literary Agency, which is Anuj Bahari, who's been here at the Lit Fest. There have been agents for Satyarth, there have been agents for Amish Tripathi, Anuja Chauhan, other speakers at this Lit Fest. They emphatically mention on the website, please do not send us poetry, plays, and screenplay. So you find that all these new voices are coming out. For example, Sangeeta began as a writer, but now we know her through her fiction. So is there a certain there's a lot of popularity of the mythological stories, So is there a certain homogenization also happening in the new? We can begin with Satya.
Okay. What's new? I can probably answer that both specifically and broadly. Specifically, in my book, Buddhism plays a predominant part. Buddhist iconography, Buddhist philosophy, Buddhist mythology, Buddhist literature. That I think is a first for an Indian thriller. And the reason I did that very consciously is also because You know, I've been recently going to a lot of colleges, judging a lot of creative writing contests, post the success of my book. And while there is lovely literature coming from young Indian authors, so that's something to be really proud of, what really bothers me is when I see these young writers creating fascinating stories, but their names, the settings, it's all Western. You know, the characters are called Alexander or Barbara, the setting is somewhere in the far West. So I think somewhere down the line, there's a lot of aping of the West happening here. So I think my book would also be an attempt to show all these young upcoming writers that there's enough raw material in our own Indian subcontinent. We don't need to look at the West. There's enough stories, enough literature, enough culture here to tap into. So let's stop doing that. So that's one. Also, my protagonist is a Odia. He's called Om Patnaik. And I had a tweet recently from another Patnaik who said, I can't believe you wrote an English novel and you put a Patnaik as the hero. I said, it's high time we did that. I mean, it's extremely, I think Odia characters, Odia stories, Odia literature needs to now predominantly feature in the mainstream. That is something also we need to look at. And yes. Also very broadly, I think my book is a thriller, and that's new. Why is that new? Is also because thriller is an emerging industry in India today. We all love to read thrillers, but there are very few Indians who are writing good thrillers. That's a huge readership out there, but we need more people to write good, intelligent thrillers. So I see my book also as a contribution in that arena, so that I hope more and more people get interested in writing thrillers and come up with really interesting stories.
Is it not working? Yeah, it is. I don't know about this new voices. I don't know if mine was a new voice because when I can you hear? Okay. I think my book came at the right time because suddenly mythology seems to be the flavor of the century. I wrote it because I was always fascinated by Karna, and it was not sort of a retelling of the Mahabharata which I wanted. It was Karna through his wife's eyes, where the wife is more or less the Sutradhar, you know, where she is sort of a conscience keeper for each character of the Mahabharata. It's not only Karna, it was also virtuous characters like Bhishma or Kunti or even a Gandhari. And it is with that perspective I wrote the book. So it was sort of a modern voice going back so many centuries ago. And actually the problem was, where Karna's wife was concerned, was if she was a modern woman, she would have walked off. But within that situation, she is trapped in that marriage. In the sense, for me it was sort of a moral confrontation of she and Karna, and trying to bring it in modern times. You know, if you really say, this sort of a situation where a wife in a marriage is disappointed with her husband sometime or the other. And then how she confronts it. It was, I think, Mahabharata was just a backdrop. And actually it was tackling modern today's problems. Or even if you see Draupadi. Draupadi was always a prize trophy. If you see her Swayamvar, there was nothing voluntary about it. I mean, it was, if someone passes the test, you get her. So there was how much, or the third one was, I think, what I really wanted to say in the book was, in today's world, especially today's world of hate and, say, violence, and even intolerance, the role of forgiveness, you know, is like the protagonist, Karna's wife, again, she's not only forgiving Karna, she's forgiving her forgiveness towards Kunti or Bhishma or even herself at the end of it. So, where it's forgiveness versus evil, basically. So, these were the topics I was actually talking about, and I don't think it's a new voice as such, because I think somehow or the other, through books, through literature, through media, we are talking about this. I mean, these are part of our daily lives. I mean, it is a part of our culture. So it's just one way of saying it. In fact, in my second book, Sita's Sister, we talk about it. Is like someone asked me, it is about Urmila. Is Urmila going to? Is it a Ramayana through Urmila's eyes? I said no. It is about Urmila, and not only about Urmila. It's about, there were 4 sisters who married the 4 brothers. So the plight of these 3 women, Urmila and the other 2 cousins, And the three queens, it's about women. We know about Ramayana is about Ram, of course. But we don't know what happened in the palace of Ayodhya after Ram left. So it's just a different perspective. And I think it was sort of an internal dialogue which we always have within ourselves. So the protagonist actually becomes a voice of all the characters. She's not just, if it was Karna's wife, it's not about the story of Karna, what his wife is telling. It's a question mark on each and every character. Was Duryodhan so black? If he was so black, why would a certain virtuous person like Karna be his friend? Or was Kunti as her entire this thing about as a mother, her role as a mother? How, was she really a mother to Karna? So these sort of questions was actually what I had. I think that is it.
Yeah. Before we go to you, just briefly, since both of you are engaging with mythology, one of the common criticisms of this new trend is that there seems to be an escape from the grim realities of the present. And from what you said, it seems that you are trying to contemporarize it in some way.
Yeah.
So would you just like to respond to this common critique of this whole fashion of mythologicals, new mythologicals being written, that it is an escape from the grim reality of the present?
No, you cannot escape from the grim present, because it is how you accept it. That is exactly, I mean, when you are contemporarizing it, it might not be actually what Karna's wife might have felt or any other. She has sort of a panoramic view of the entire event or that whole epic, and the reactions are very modern. So it is definitely not escapism. It is actually tackling even this whole thing of entitlement versus merit. So it is, I mean, it is a modern problem. It still is there. So we are not escaping from the present. I mean, it's.
Would you like to?
Yeah, I do agree, because I think mythology, terming mythology just as escape, I think it's unfair. I think mythology is extremely relevant. I think we had a session yesterday about Mahabharata and how relevant it is even today, and how, we are still milking it and creating stories out of that. So I think a lot of mythology, whether it's Indian or Western or whatever, I think that the fact that it still remains, it still continues to inspire and be interpreted and reinterpreted probably is because there is so much matter within that. And I'm so glad that Indian authors are now discovering that and using that. I'm glad that someone like an Ashwin Sanghi uses Indian mythology to actually create an interesting and intriguing story. And that actually, I think, is also familiarizing a lot of our youngsters with our mythology, which is I think a huge service that's being done by, because I think a lot more people knew about the Holy Grail after reading Dan Brown than probably they otherwise would have. So I think it would be unfair to call it just an escape. I think it has an important role to play, and our authors need to understand that. So handling mythology is a huge responsibility, and you need to do that really properly and correctly.
Whether I consider myself as a new voice or not, first of all, I'm writing for last 11 years, and so inside my soul is a old writer's soul actually, and I have walked so much for last 11 years, so actually I'm quite tired of writing. But when I started writing 10 years back and I got published for the first time, initially I was a poet, and then I started writing prose, and that too I wrote a huge volume of a novel, and which got published in a very famous magazine called Deshpotrika. That time people started, there was quite a lot of controversy on my writing, as because I was writing, there were quite a lot of sex was there in my writing, and people were all, double-minded whether to accept or not to accept. But they were saying that it was all about graphic description of sex, which was not true, because I was trying to, write the sexual politics, not the performance of sex. Earlier we have seen that when the men used to write, sex, they used to, write about women like they are some fairies or beautiful women, and all it was about fascinating a woman. But my writing was not about, my sexuality was not about all this. It was quite hardcore truth, which has so much of, womanhood was there in my writing. So in this way, you can say that to some extent my writing was considered as something new was happening in Bengali literature. But I think what that time what was happening, individuality was growing. People were becoming like they were becoming more conscious about themselves. That time, I can tell you that 10 years back, people, 13, 14 years back, there was no mobile phones. Then mobile phone came, and it was about something which one single person is having one single communication thing. So that way, the individuality was, growing. People were becoming private. They were thinking that I can live for myself, not just I am living for my family, or I am living for the society, or I have to do it for my whole life. That idea of living for own self was gradually you were coming in the way, which was not there 15, 20 years ago. Especially women they were just, draining themselves in the society and in the family. They were all very, inside the house. They were coming out. So I think my writing was about that, about capturing that individuality a lot. If you ask me, then I will say these are the two facets where I would consider my voice as a new voice, which has become a very old voice now because people are writing about all these things for last 7, 8 years. I mean, too many women have written about, the womanhood and the celebration of womanhood, then the crisis of womanhood, then the sexuality and all. But that time, these things were not that much, portrait in the literature.
I think we would like to hear a bit about the story of how you all started writing. What got you the inspirations, influences. And one question that bugs me is, what is it about mothers? I mean, both Kavita and Satyarth have gone on record saying that their mothers actually gave them the confidence that they could be authors. And when I read that, I was reminded of those of us who have seen A Runaway Bride. Richard Gere is this reporter who says that my father wanted me to be a classical musician. My mother wanted to be a novelist. I ended up being a reporter. So please tell us a bit about your inspirations, influences, and if I may ask, if there are any authors who gave you the confidence that you can write as good or as bad. I'm reminded of, when I'm asking this question, those of us who have read H. Rider Haggard, King Solomon's Mines, that was a novel I loved as a child. Apparently, Haggard had written King Solomon's Mines after being motivated, after reading Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson, and said that I can definitely write a better story than that. Even Edgar Rice Burroughs, who was probably the most popular author of the first decades of the 20th century, who wrote the Tarzan novels, it is said about him that he wrote Tarzan of the Ape thinking, that let me see how bad a novel can I write and get away with it. So you can choose to answer or not answer, but something about the story of how you started writing.
The only thing I can say, I hope I don't inspire anyone that way. The writing is so bad that, okay.
Yeah.
About the influences? I think influences, when you're writing, I think it's sort of a progression. I think I had to write a book. I decided I would write a book. So influences, yes, my mother was egging on for a very long time because he said, okay, you're writing for the newspapers for the past 20 years, why don't you write a book? That was the influential part of it. That was how she influenced me, as said. And no, unconsciously, yes. When you're writing a book, when you're sort of fleshing out the character, there are certain people whose thoughts, whose they are at the back of your mind. So physically, no, there was no such influence as such. My parents are definitely not into mythology. It was my grandmother actually who told me a lot of stories. But mythology was by accident. I mean, this whole genre came by accident because it was Karna, and there was another character in Ramayana who used to fascinate, was Lakshman. So that was the only two reasons why I picked up these topics. Otherwise, I think influence is an ongoing thing. I mean, authors, whether they are philosophers or people in your daily life. I mean, it's like, I know one person who has gone through the worst of tragedies, but one thing which never left her face was a smile. And that sort of is an inspiration for me, or an influence for me. Ki, how positive can a person be? The power. So I think influence is, I would not tag it. For me, it happens. I mean, there might be, incidentally, if I meet someone, I mean, that person might unconsciously influence me sometime or the other. It's sort of, when you're actually writing down, you remember a certain character and then you remember a certain person and you sort of, you want to put it down. So that is just...
How did you start writing? When was it you started working on this? You started with this novel only? You started with this novel, or did you try fiction earlier?
No, not at all. I had not done fiction at all. Nothing. This is my first attempt of whatever. I did not even know. I think the last writing I did was essays in school. So, no, nothing beyond that. Otherwise, it was all journalism writing. And it was, I think, okay, kitab likhna hai, to likha. It was more a case of that. And yes, and mythology was by accident. I mean, definitely it was by accident. So.
Sangeeta?
I was 13 then, and it was my birthday, and I was presented with a Jibanananda Das, it's a very rich book. It is Tushar Pandulipi. And I started reading that book. That was the first ever poetry book I went through. And then somewhere I felt that the darkness, I can much relate with the darkness, and I have that darkness inside. So I thought of writing. So it was not like, some outer thing, asking you to write, whether your mother is asking you to, write, or your society is, giving you advances that you can write. It's about a very inner call. It's a crisis. Writing is a crisis. It cannot happen like, it is there inside you, and you cannot do without it. It cannot come suddenly one day. You are born with it. I think it's my personal opinion. And I was writing since I was 13. And then very, very after, I first got published at the age of 26. I didn't have this in my mind that I have to get published, because it was so fulfilling inside, whether to write down those words you are feeling. That was so fulfilling itself that it's a long, long time then one would thought about, getting published and all. So that was my starting point.
To say that my mom inspired me is actually putting it very mildly. She literally pushed me, she threatened me, she did everything possible. The only thing she didn't do was kick me out of the house. So that's that's the story of my inspiration. Yes, absolutely. Odia mothers are probably, I think, two states, they say the most dangerous thing is a Punjabi saas and an Odia mother. They forgot to add that to the script. But of course, as far as writing is concerned, I've always loved to write thrillers because I've grown up reading thrillers. I've admired the greats like Arthur Conan Doyle and Agatha Christie and Sue Grafton and Irving Wallace. And I've always desired to actually emulate them because I love the way thrillers put a character in an extraordinary situation that's so removed from our normal humdrum life. And also the fact that how thrillers are able to play with the mind of the reader. That was something I wanted to do really badly. I wanted to create a circumstance, put my character there, and just play with his mind as much as possible. So that was always the inspiration. So I knew when I would write a book, it would have to be a thriller. That was a given. And as far as the second question goes, I think the one person that when I read him and I thought I would love to write the way he does, for me that was absolutely Dan Brown. Dan Brown, I just love the kind of research he puts in, the kind of map he creates, the kind of trail he creates, where the characters are just out there cracking codes, having so much of mind-twisting fun. So I wanted to do that. I wanted to create codes and riddles. So if he has codes, I have riddles in my book, which my characters are trying to crack. So he has been a huge inspiration. And now if I see a review where they actually compare my book to Dan Brown, I feel extremely honored. I feel extremely honored to actually get a review like that.
But what if someone says that you are aping Dan Brown?
I'll be flattered. I'll be very flattered because Dan Brown, I think, he's an amazing author, and I'll be very flattered to even be put in that same category. And he's actually coming to India on the 10th of November, and I'm absolutely thrilled and looking forward to meet him in Delhi.
Okay, thank you. Kavita, one thing that you mentioned, and I find it interesting, because you said that you had been writing for many years since you're a journalist and all, and that takes me to this interesting debate around journalism and literature. Like yesterday in one of the sessions also, one of our speakers, Mr. Soumyaranjan Patnaik, talked about how journalism is seen as hack writing. He was alluding to that, and literature is this higher calling. So there is that perception often, of course, and all of you have been journalists. I mean, and how would you respond to this? I remember, of course, the famous comment by Oscar Wilde, as he is. The difference between journalism and literature is that journalism is unreadable and literature is not read. That's typical Oscar Wilde. And for me, it's interesting that we have this prejudice, given that many of the very eminent novelists have been journalists, at some point of time. Charles Dickens, Mark Twain, Ernest Hemingway, Orwell. Marcus, probably the greatest novelist of the last century, always called himself a journalist. In fact, he said that that's the best job in the world. So would you talk a bit, each of you, on this connection, this debate between journalism and literature, and if you think that journalism has helped you as a writer? Well,
I remember for my first lecture as a journalism student, the person had told, who are the literature students out here? So there were a handful. So please forget your literature and stick to practical today's writing. That's the first thing we will learn. And when you are doing creative writing, it's the other way around. You have to actually unlearn. What you are, journalism writing, I think the best thing is it gives you a certain discipline first, and then it teaches you how to be fair. This whole thing of perspective. See, it's very easy to become subjective. It's extremely biased. It's very easy to get biased. So journalism actually teaches you to be fair, and how fair, and then that sort of translates into creative writing. Like you have to be fair to each of your character. It's like they say you start falling in love with one character more. So I think that sort of fairness is there. And what else in journalism? I think the discipline, the whole thing of, I remember my first, the draft was 140,000 words. And the publisher said, please bring it down to 90,000. And I could do that in 5 days. That was because of the editing part of journalism. So journalism, of course, as a technical weapon, it's a boon when you are writing. Whether it's like the discipline of writing, okay, I'll write so many words today, or the completely cruel editing, where you are not falling in love with your own words. You have to be extremely clinical about the editing part also. So I think it is there. It becomes a part of you. After 20 years in journalism, I think it's a part of your writing. So unconsciously, yes, this whole thing of drama not being there. You sort of tone it down. You should know when to tone it down. This whole thing, and an entire, how you assimilate everything, the character, the narrative, the plot, and then trying to balance it out. So these technicalities, I think it might not be so obvious in journalism writing, but it is there. Journalism writing, I was into features, so I had more liberty to play around with my language and words. So yes, I think this was a little extension of that with lots and lots of imagination. No imagination allowed in journalism at all. So that was that's what I can say really.
You know, you had a quote you mentioned. I'm reminded of a quote, though I'm forgetting who said it, but it's kind of relevant. It says, journalism is literature in a hurry. So that also, I think, is another way of looking at it. How far has my job helped me out? I think I would say yes and no, because as a TV journalist, television writing is very different. That is that's like a different janam. It has to be short and snazzy, short sentences, direct words, no adjectives. That's absolutely different. So writing a novel is nowhere close to the kind of writing we do for television. So in terms of writing, I don't think it has helped me much. But I think where it actually comes in handy is I think it gives my writing a visual quality. Because when you're writing for television, you're writing for screen. So you need to think visually, and because ultimately you have to go and shoot that. So that that quality I think has crept into my book. There's a certain visual quality there. Also, I think it's also all about authenticity. Because as a journalist, you have to be authentic, you have to be well researched. You need to, whatever you're putting out there has to be
this
perfectly
sort of, it helped in research, yes.
Exactly.
Big time. To patiently go through, lots of articles, everything. Books and what scholars have to say. The research.
That's true, and
yes.
research is a huge part of my book because I am recreating an era that was thousands of years back, so it had to be authentic and factual and as true as possible. So I think in terms of research and creating a visual quality, I think there my job has come in handy. Also, one of my characters in the book is a journalist. So she goes to all these soporific, yawn-inducing press conferences that I have been to. So I think all that has also sneaked in somewhere. But ultimately, in terms of writing, I think very different, apples and oranges, so yeah.
I can describe it in many ways, like journalism is bikini and literature is like, cocktail sari flowing and all, two bare minimums like. But, there is a journalist in every writer, I think. Whether they have worked in some desk or not doesn't matter. There has to be a journalist because a person who is observing and, trying to figure out the facts from that observation. And I'm a very bad journalist because I don't appear in my office. I go office 10 times a month like that. But when first I got the job after I was getting published in Anandabajar Potrika, they offered me the job of this journalist. That time, the person who interviewed me was Uday Narayan, who was the CEO of Star Plus that time. He interviewed me. And he only asked me this same question, what do you find, is there any difference between journalism and being a writer? So I said that it's about, when the rainwater falls on the ground, it takes 20 years to go all the, layers, to go across all the layers, and when it becomes a pure water, it takes 20 years to go that level. But, journalism is like the rainwater falling on the ground, and literature is that 20 years time which has gone across. It's about the huge philosophy which you stuff into that that facts and the figure. Then it becomes literature. Then it becomes eternal. And journalism is about the at the short period of time, something happening now or has happened. It is time bound, but when it is literature, it is eternal because it has a eternal philosophy in it. So it's huge. There is a huge difference between journalism and literature. This is my opinion.
But did you ever face the situation where you were taken less seriously as a writer because you're a journalist? Did it ever happen? Many people have talked about that. Many people have said that they had not read a particular book or read a particular author because that person was a journalist and they had this prejudice. Did you ever face this prejudice?
From the readers?
Yeah, from readers. readers or critics or scholars or anyone?
No, I think nowadays writing is it's like everyone is working. I mean, most of the writers are working, and either he's a investment banker.
Unless
He's
their books
someone,
do.
yeah, he's someone, and like.
But unless the books do as well as Satyarths and Kavitas, so they can't.
No, but then I
have
had to quit my job. So
Yeah, both of
eventually.
them have quit their jobs, because the books are doing well and they have to devote to writing. Yeah.
No, but there's no prejudice. I don't think so. I mean, it's okay. You're a journalist. I think they accept it. Journalist, the next progression is a writer. So
On the other hand, you want to respond to this? No.
I just wanted to say one of the reviewers said that I picked up the book because he was a journalist and I was disappointed. So I guess that's the other way to look at it, yes. So.
But do you think, given Kavita, there's something you mentioned about deadlines and all. Do you think with this, and you mentioned the publishing industry, that's something I would like to, for us to talk about. Do you think that literary agents and publishers today are more likely to bet on, particularly in terms of new voices, on people who are journalists who are used to meeting deadlines, who will be less sensitive about editors asking them to cut down from 140,000 to 90,000 or something like that? Do you think, for those of us who don't know, there's a very interesting thing happening in the last few months. I think I read about Vikram Seth. For those of you who have not followed it, so Vikram Seth was supposed to write the sequel to A Suitable Boy, titled A Suitable Girl, and he's already got a £1 million advance for it. And there's a story that he's been asked to return a part of the money because he has not been able to come up with the sequel. So there is this, and it said that Penguin in the US apparently is suing 12 authors in a New York court because they have not been able to come up with the manuscripts. So would you just like to talk a bit, about this publishing industry, this pressure that may be from literary agents and the publishers, and also how did you go, and because you got published in the last 2 years, particularly the two of you, and in your case, Sangeeta, you got published in English recently. If you could just tell a bit also about how did you find, you had a manuscript or you were working on a manuscript, how did you get an agent or a publisher, that whole journey, if you could say. And also, do you think literary festivals like this one is actually doing a lot of good to new voices? Given the fact that there are, in fact in Orissa itself, in 30-40 days we are having, including this one, we are having 3 literary festivals. In India, there are something like 60 literary festivals. You've been to Bangalore, Mumbai, Satya, you're here, you were at Pune, Kavita, you're going to Jaipur, Sangeeta. So what literary festivals are doing to new voices in terms of promoting these voices?
Okay, I'll have to be really brief because that's too many questions. To start with, I don't think agents really put that much pressure on you unless you are a successful author. That's at least what I have seen. I mean, you guys might differ because I remember when my first book was out there, my agent hardly, of course he took all the interest that he had to, but there was no pressure. But now that the book is out, it's done well, now he's after my life ki 6 months mein agla book aa jana chahiye. So the pressure is happening now because he feels we need to cash on the momentum that the book has generated, and now the book, it has to be, now it needs to be an assembly line thingy. That one after the one you have to be, har saal mein kitab aani chahiye. So that pressure is happening now. So I think that happens when so again, Vikram Seth, being Vikram Seth, the pressure was there on him because he was Vikram Seth. I don't think debut authors really would feel that much pressure, unless of course your book is delayed way long than it was supposed to be. So that's point one. Yeah, I found my agent basically because I was looking for an agent, and Delhi fortunately has a number of really good agents. So I went to Anuj Bahari because he was also Amish Tripaঠি's agent. So I thought that he would probably be the best person for my book, since we also are writing in a similar genre. So Reading Literary Agency I approached and I sent them. It's similar to how you send a manuscript to a publishing house. You send it across to an agency. If they like it, then you are on. They make you a part of the agency. Then it is the agency's headache to start pitching the book out to publishing houses. You don't have to do that. So agencies these days actually do a lot. They will pitch your book, they will edit your manuscript, they will also promote it. So they do a lot of services, and they're all free of charge. You only have to pay them only when you actually crack a deal with a publishing house. That's when the payments start coming in. Otherwise, every other service is absolutely free of charge. That's point number 2. And regarding festivals, of course, I think festivals definitely are giving a platform to a lot of, in Bangalore, I saw a lot of debut authors that I never heard of. They were there talking about their books. We are here talking about our books. So I think all these festivals need to be applauded for giving us platform, and and especially, of course, Orissa. I'm glad to see my book out here that so many people can buy. That is something I think that that's a huge pat on the back for OLF, that is actually making all these books available and accessible to all these people out there. So I think OLF is doing a great job, and I'm sure it'll just keep going from strength to strength, and absolutely, yeah.
Where publishing my first book was, I had given my manuscript to all the publishers, and
You didn't go through an agent?
no, I just I got there. I did some. I told you it was more a trial and error sort of an exercise. So I sent it to all the leading publishers, and 5 accepted, and out of the 5 I had to choose. So, anyways, as he correctly said, I think it's the second book where the pressure comes. First book, okay, it's like it's make or break, the first book. But then the second book, the pressures are like they want it during a certain time, and then the second, then the third, then the pressure actually starts. But again, as deadlines was not a problem. I mean, practically there again my journalism thing came into use, where okay, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, whatever it is, I'll give it within 6 months. And then after that, I think they need another 3 months to work on the story. So I think that's how they go about it. So technically within a year's time, they want the book out. And where festivals are concerned, yes, definitely. It gives an exposure to the author. He meets, right people, whatever. He meets different type of people, I mean, which are connected to his field. And I think what really I like about the literary festival is when the author and the reader interaction, where I remember as a literature student when I met Nizam Ezekiel, I was so much in awe of that person that it is that sort of a thing, if a reader has a chance to meet a very big author, like I see Dan Brown is coming and he's all agog. So that sort of, I think that is what I really like. It is the reader and the author relationship. And of course, you meet agents, you meet publishers, you meet all the concerned people. And I think it's a thriving thing, literary. You have so many literary festivals now, so it's like you have to keep your...
It's an industry in itself.
Yeah, it's like trending. So.
Our picture is very different. Ravi Shankar Da is sitting here. He knows it. In Kolkata, in Bengal, I am like I'm not directly connected to a publishing house. I work for the media house, which is Telegraph and Anandabajar Potrika, and I write for them only. I cannot write for anybody else. So for the whole year, I have a huge work pressure of writing, because they have 6, 7 magazines and all the metro papers and everything. So I have I had to write more than 12 short stories a year, 1 or 2 novels, then features, then film reviews, then cover story, then article, then post edits, then blogs. So it's I go through a lot of workload so far as my writing is concerned. It's different, and you don't get so much of time to write a novel. Like you took the advance and you are writing for 3 years. That doesn't happen there. Every year you have to keep on producing. So it's such a huge workload. And so far as this Lit Festival is... Oh, that... I don't know all these things. I've written for them. Somehow these things have...
So sometimes
happened.
things just
Orunabha
fall
is the
into
only
place.
catalyst who has
Actually,
done
what
this.
happens at literary festival, it happened with me. I got the translation thing at the literary festival. The vernacular publishers came and approached me, and they said, okay, fine, whatever it is. In fact, an extension of this question should be really, should a writer write or should he promote his book? I think that should be another question.
And I'm very innocent because, you know, last time I went to Delhi in some session with HarperCollins, and somebody asked me that how many copies did you sell this book? And I looked at Aruna because I don't have any clue how many. I said 500, no, 2,000. Then somebody told me it was 5,000. So I am very clueless. And I don't want to know also. I'm happy that I'm being able to write and I'm getting published. And I have a strong editorial board who is, you know, directing me that this is, you know, according to your level. No, this is not good, throw it away. And so far as this lead meets are concerned, you know, writer is a lonely person, you know. End of the day when you get there on your table and only a single lamp is there and you are writing and people are having all sorts of fun and you envy it so much. Mostly the filmmakers, they have huge teams and all dancing, singing. So you become so frustrated with this writing profession, you don't know. At least lead meets have added some glamour, and also, you know, you don't feel that lonely. Okay. You know that, okay, if you work for 2 months, then you'll get to, you know, chakkar ho jayega thoda, or you get to know people. So it's good. I think it's good like that. To me, it's good.
Yeah, of course, some people like Amitabh Ghosh call it a tamasha, and you know, there are people who say that there is a certain Bollywoodization of literature that is happening, you know, in the sense that you have to, you know, like the question. But I think we'll stop here. Any questions from the audience? Okay, Purabi, can we have the mic? I'll see how much time we have. I'll just try to, okay, yeah, we can begin from there.
In regional literature,
Can you please specify if the question is directed to any particular author here?
and maybe to you also, to you,
To me?
yes.
Okay.
In regional literature, say Orissa,
And there.
there is more input than export. If there are writings untranslated by self or by other translators in Orissa, it is very, very difficult to find out appropriate publisher outside border of Orissa. No exposure.
Sir, so if you
how,
may just...
so how to solve this problem? For example, I am
No, sir, I get your question.
I have written 14 novels.
Excuse me, sir. Sorry, sir. I get your question, but I would just prefer the questions to be directed to the authors here. So if anyone...
Hello there.
Yes, can we have the mic there? Purabi, Avinash.
To the authors on the dais, can you? Yeah, I had this question. So I thank the festival team for bringing me along because before the festival I didn't know any one of you. So it was a great pleasure, you know, knowing you. And obviously we'll be reading about your books in the future. Because all of you, you know, delve into mythology. I mean, that's the point of my question. The theme of your writing is obviously about Indian culture and religion. But the question is, why do we all refer it to as mythology? I mean, you know, mythology is a term given by Westerners. They didn't understand our culture, which is our religion. And for them, it was an enigma. They said, okay, this is either we accept it or we reject it. Those who accepted it, they became Indophiles or they became practitioners of our culture like the Hare Krishna movement people. And the others, they severely criticized it. But that term mythology has remained with our religion and our culture till now.
I think it's a good question. Would any...
All of you, I mean, because you see, all of you are referring to as mythology, in Indian mythology.
Yeah. His question is, why are we calling it mythology? No, it's a term that has come from the West because it is their way of, you know, making sense of what was there.
Here the point is, mythology, as far as I know, maybe you can correct me, is something which is not true, or something which can be fabricated.
I mean, he's talking about, you know, mythology as myth as the binary of myth and reality.
Why not?
So why that? Yeah. So, would you like to respond? You can use this. Why are we calling it mythology?
Now, I mean, again, I think there's a difference between myth and mythology again. So, if you are talking about the epics as a part of a living reality, yes, it is. In fact, that is why mythology as a genre is very popular.
No, I mean, why the term mythology? Why not just...
You're against the word mythology.
Exactly. To be termed to Mahabharata and Ramayana, it's not mythology. It's still relevant today. It's popular in TV and in...
So we'll just hear her. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
And
Why the term mythology? It's our culture, you know. We are writing about our culture. Why the term mythology to Mahabharata?
so you made your point. Yeah.
That's what
We just.
No, mythology, I don't know, like if you're sort of tagging it as a fantasy or something, then it is a derogatory word. But otherwise, I don't think they are epics. I mean, they are mythology in the sense because some people may call it history, but then they are not historical facts. The fact that, mythology is when it's just not a story, it's a story told centuries. It's a very ancient, you can call it ancient fiction, you can call it ancient story. The reason why mythology, or whatever word you want to describe it as, it has sustained for so many centuries is the underlying layers. It's just not a story of Ram and Sita or Mahabharata. What are they? They're the moral lessons which, the psychological layers. I mean, that is the reason why they are still surviving. So, I would not say mythology because it is not proven. I can't.
No, I think, yeah, the point. Yeah. Just one more question. Okay, the last question.
Okay, the question is we are talking about new voices in Indian literature. I very recently read a book by Scott Hutchinson, which is published in 2012, I think, called A Working Theory of Love, which talks about a man discovering a relationship with his father and finding love through artificial intelligence. There's a talking computer. My question is that when we are talking about new voices in Indian literature, why is it that we are always going back to the past? Why, do we not have new inspiration in the form of technology, the technological explosion, social media? I mean, there is so much happening out there, alternate same-sex, alternate sex, all kinds of stuff is happening out there. So why are we stuck? Don't we have new inspiration?
Satya, Kavita, why are we going back to the past?
I wouldn't say we are stuck because as I started my the conversation here, I think a part of my book why I think is new is because we are using Indian elements. That is something that I find really lacking in a lot of young Indian authors today. I think they're constantly looking at the West for inspiration and creating those kind of stories. So I think somewhere down the line, my attempt here is to inspire these young writers to look at the Indian kind of the material we have in India, whether it's cultural, social, political, mythological, whatever you want to name it. That I think is really the need of the hour, because I've been to a lot of colleges, read a lot of new writing that's coming in, and believe you me, 90% of them, they're all Western settings, Western names, Western characters, Western, the entire feel of the story. All the elements are Western, and that is a huge problem. We need to really tell our young authors to stop doing that and start writing more and more Indian stories. So that is something that we have to look at. That's the need of the hour. So that was my point when I said that I feel that is new in my particular kind of writing, because I want them to actually change that particular mindset. So that was my point. So in case someone wants to add to that.
Past, I would say it, like why we go to the past is not, as I said earlier, it is not retelling of the past actually. It is giving the modern perspective to it, and it's like 30 years ago, I mean, especially when we are talking about mythology is part of us. I mean, it's like whether it's your folk songs or whatever. I mean, we are going to our past each and every time. You see our songs, you see our bhajans, you see everything. I mean, it's a living part. There is hardly any difference between mythology and religion now, especially where Mahabharata and Ramayana is concerned. So the reason why we are going back to the past is, like I'm talking about my books per se, is that there are certain characters who have been written and rewritten about, and there are certain people who have not been dealt at all because they're just caricatures. Like especially my second book, Urmila. Urmila is just a mention. There's nothing about her. I mean, she was supposed to have slept for about 14 years. So you don't know what happened during those 14 years. So it's just a question of, it's just a creative license we are taking and wondering what might have happened there. So it is not a past actually, it is just delving into a huge canvas, and within that frame, you know, not sort of trying to corrupt the entire frame, but trying to add a little color to that. But then it is not, I would not call it retelling, it is definitely not retelling. So.
All right, I think we'll have to end the question answer session here because the next one, the author as a chronicler of history, is equally interesting. I'm sure there'll be quite a few questions for that session as well. So may I now request the managing editor of the New Indian Express, Ms. Champadhar Kamath, to please come on stage and present mementos to all our esteemed panelists here. And we'll have, yeah, the group photograph. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, everyone. All right, we will now